This conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.
This is Al, the robot
Dave.
of Space Odyssey
This conversation
2001.
can serve no purpose anymore.
Controlling Dave,
Goodbye.
the astronaut
Dave.
of the space station.
This conversation can serve no purpose anymore.
Do you have
Goodbye.
a robot controlling you? Do you have an equivalent of Al controlling your decisions?
This conversation can serve no purpose anymore.
Most of you will say no. Of course not. I'm fully independent, fully autonomous.
Dave.
Okay,
This conversation can serve
Fine.
no purpose anymore.
but
Goodbye.
let me ask you a simple math question,
Dave.
just to better
This
understand
conversation can serve no
how
purpose
our brain
anymore.
works. Yes, we are independent. You say no robot controlling
Hey.
your decisions.
This conversation can serve no purpose anymore.
But let's try
Goodbye.
a very simple
Hey.
math question.
This conversation can
A
serve
ball
no purpose
and a baseball bat cost $1.10. The bat cost $1 more than the ball.
Dave.
How much does the ball
This
cost?
conversation can serve no purpose anymore.
Okay, be honest. The majority of you thought 10 cents. Because instinctively, you figured
This conversation
10
can
cents.
serve no purpose anymore.
10% of the cost of the bat. But in reality, the ball is 5 cents.
This
The bat
conversation
is
can
$1
serve no
more than the
purpose
ball,
anymore.
$1.05.
Goodbye.
Total $1.10. If you said 10 cents, that was the same answer that the majority of
conversation can
students
serve
at
no
Harvard
purpose anymore.
said. What this illustrates is how our brain works. This is the difference between the autopilot
conversation can serve no
instinctive
purpose
decision
anymore.
versus the pilot, where we make more complex decisions. Let me use another example.
Dave.
Remember when you started driving,
This conversation can serve
you were
no
fully
purpose
focused,
anymore.
super stressed out.
Goodbye.
You were paying attention to every
This
detail,
conversation
listening to
can
the
serve no
instructor.
purpose anymore.
You were using the pilot, full capacity of your brain to learn something. A few years later, or many years later, you can listen to music, watch the scenery, talk to someone while you're driving. You're using the autopilot. And in our day-to-day lives, in our professional lives, very often we decide to rely on the autopilot, to go with instinctive decision.
Dave.
Ottawa
This
2017.
conversation can serve no
I was asked by Mayor Watson in 2015 to take on this role. At the time, we had limited budgets. The city had put aside $300,000 to develop the program over 3 years. There was no recognition, no brand recognition, no track record. Ottawa Tourism had put aside $2-3 million to bring sporting events. Some decision makers were saying, let's try to bring back the Junior Awards, let's try to host the Grey Cup, and we'll boost the scale of existing festivals and events in Ottawa. I don't think this would have been enough to position Ottawa as the hub, as the epicenter of the celebration to celebrate the sesquicentennial, the 150th of Canada. So when asked by Mayor Watson, I said, first thing, we have to create an independent entity, Ottawa 2017. That's where I isolated myself in the Magdalen Islands, listened to very loud, crazy techno music, drank lots of red wine, and wrote a crazy 300-page business plan. And the business plan was about going from $300,000 per year to trying to raise a $40 million budget. And in 6 months, thanks to the hard work of my team at the time, we managed in 6 months to go from about $1 million to a budget of $40 million with private sector, public sector, and self-generated revenues. And one of the lessons learned out of this is, first, the importance of taking calculated risk, to push the envelope, to take calculated risk based on proper planning, good analytical process, consultation, and from that, to be able to have higher return on investment. As a result, my super talented team and I, with the support of thousands of volunteers, sponsors, partners, City of Ottawa, Ottawa Tourism, we managed to pull off 200 events over the course of the year. No glitch, everything went well, and I think we succeeded in making Ottawa the epicenter of the sesquicentennial. Again, risk-taking for high return on investment, whatever your role is, whatever your budget is. Second lesson learned, the importance of having a raison d'être, a mission, a vision, beyond numbers and dollars. Yes, we wanted to have maximum economic impact. We wanted to increase the number of tourists coming to our city. But what we wanted to do was way more than that. Ram Dass said, we are souls, and as souls, we are not under time and space, we are infinite. And what we wanted to achieve was to inspire youth, to elevate the souls of youth, to make sure that Ottawa 2017 would have the same impact as 67 on baby boomers like myself. Third lesson learned, fight against bureaucratic inertia. I can see some people laughing. Yes, we're in the mecca of government. This place is probably the epicenter of bureaucracy. Let's be honest. It is present all over our city. Not only in government. I'm not criticizing government. Yes, they have to be faced with all kinds of political correctness and all kinds of rules, but bureaucracy and bureaucratic inertia is also present in large organizations, even in small ones who are risk-averse. So how can you break bureaucratic inertia? If I take the example of my colleagues in the federal government, on December 31st, 2016, they went with more of an angel type of production. Little risk-taking. Stage performance, fireworks on Parliament Hill. Ottawa 2017 decided to go with more of the devil's approach, but with young angels. We selected 400 kids, 400 youth, based on contribution, results that they had achieved in their community. We had an elder from Pikwakanagan, the Algonquin community, just west of Ottawa. And the firekeeper, the elder, started a sacred fire at City Hall. We used that fire to ignite the cauldron just a few hundred meters from here. And then Mayor Watson took this fire and passed it on to a young girl from Syria who had arrived in Ottawa just 6 months prior and already was contributing to her community. And then she took this torch from Ottawa 2017 and passed it on to the next kid, to the next kid. As a result, we had a 1 kilometer line of light and fire, taking the sacred fire from Indigenous people all the way to Parliament Hill, and the Governor General used this sacred fire to reignite the centennial flame. That's what I mean by, again, engaging youth, making them proud, and doing things non-traditional way. Fourth lesson learned, resolve issues not knowing who makes the final decision. Does that ring a bell? Have any of you been faced with that? In our case, the question was, who makes the decision? Is it the mayor? Is it the sponsors? The partners? The board of directors? Very often, we are faced with situations where you can't figure exactly who will call the shots. So that's where you have to take leadership. You have to push for decisions to be made. You have to come to decision makers with clear, realistic plans demonstrating the return on investment. So you can push and maintain momentum. So every day there is progress to break the situation. In our case, Despite the fact that we all had all those partners, we were able to push to get decisions made and to please all those partners. Fifth lesson learned, do not plan by committee. Is that possible in Ottawa? Again, many of you must have been faced in the last few weeks with situations where you have 15, 20 people around the table. Then you have to come up with a compromise that will please everyone, but you end up with a mixed solution, diluted solution with very little impact. In our case, we wanted to celebrate the fact that Ottawa's land, 90% of our land is rural. We wanted to celebrate agriculture and the quality of produce grown in the Ottawa region. The committee type of decision would have been, let's organize bus tours so people can go and pick fresh fruits in Ottawa countryside. But we decided to take risks, to go more with the devil's type of approach. And for example, as part of Agri 150, we had fire and ice. So imagine yourself, middle of February, you arrive on site and you're greeted by fire breeders, fire jugglers, fire. And you go inside this greenhouse where we grow tomatoes, just south of Ottawa, and the interior of the greenhouse was totally transformed. You could breathe the fragrance of tomatoes, but we had architectural lighting and we had a gourmet dinner served by Chef Marc Lépine with molecular cuisine. Sixth lesson learned, the importance of having single artistic or leadership vision to succeed. And I'm not saying that you should all be autocratic. Democracy is important. But if you want consistency, if you want your brand to have across the board the same image, the same style, you need to have leadership and to have a single artistic vision. Seventh lesson learned. Take the instruction booklet for your tools or your assets, turn it upside down or burn it. We created Miwate. This was a tribute to Indigenous people. We created somewhat of a spiritual experience with very modern music, with very powerful multimedia effects to make Indigenous people proud, to get them to be recognized, and to improve people's appreciation and understanding of their culture. Yes, this was a spiritual type of production, but definitely with the devil's approach. Eighth lesson learned. Have the guts to say no, to say back off. I had been working for 10 years in trying to bring the Red Bull crashed ice to Ottawa. And I had proposed to Red Bull to do it around the Rideau Canal locks or Nepean Point. Just imagine the nightmare. There are 8 different government organizations involved with the Rideau Canal locks. So having to convince Parks Canada, the RCMP, Parliamentary Precinct, Public Works, and even though I had been vice president of the National Capital Commission for over 10 years, I will confess that I knew that they would block the road, that they would be against it. So I'm not saying here be dishonest. I'm not saying be disrespectful, but be aware. And I knew there was a bit of bad faith that they would block the way, not allowing us to move forward. So what I decided to do was move forward, inform the NCC 3 days before the announcement. Finally, 9th lesson learned. Trigger experiences of serendipity. Have the guts to mix high-risk ingredients. Plan. And as a result, you will be able to generate some magic. President Sirleaf, the first female president in Africa, said, "The size of your dreams should always be beyond your current capacity to achieve them. If your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough." And boy, was I ever scared when I managed to convince all the partners to be the first city in North America to host La Machine. As we were able to transform the downtown core of Ottawa over a 4-day period, to get every adult to become a kid again, to get every tourist to have a once-in-a-lifetime experience. We told the media that we had had 750,000 people coming out over a 4-day period. In reality, it was more like 1 million, but I didn't want to be accused of inflating numbers. This was the biggest ever cultural production in Ottawa history. It allowed us to get international visibility, to have huge economic impact, but first and foremost, to inspire people, to inspire youth, to create magic, to create memorable experiences for residents and visitors to our city, and to transform the image people have of Ottawa. Will you do like Dave and shut down the robot that's controlling your decisions? Will you join me in limiting the power of the robot inside of you, the autopilot dictating your decisions? Will you let the devil do more and more of your decisions?
Goodbye.
Will you take more of a pilot approach to fully exploit possibilities of gutsy, innovative decisions?
This conversation can serve
Ottawa
no purpose anymore.
just reached the threshold of 1 million inhabitants.
Dave, this conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.
Join me and let's carry the torch together. Let's find ways by which we can get this city to higher levels. Let's find ways by which we can make Ottawa an even more cool, innovative, progressive city. Let's transform this place and let's make Canada proud of what this capital is all about. Join us in transforming Ottawa. Thank you.